Media and Pop Culture with Craig Norris, PhD. All right, here we are, Media Tackle for another exciting week of pop culture discussion, media, entertainment, unusual things that are on my desk, things that I've come across on the internet. It's a big place, the internet, and it's an enormous place this week. We're going to look at some bizarre stuff around the Mobius movie. Morbius movie. So we'll get around to some stuff on Morbius, and what else we got? Some Star Wars stuff. Let's have a look. Suffocation in virtual reality. Stranger Things, of course, has just come out. A little bit of retro game chat. But let's start with the excitement of Morbius, I think. Morbius is such an unusual phenomena. What is Morbius? What indeed is Morbius? Morbius is so many things to so many people, it seems. It's a phenomenon. It's a lifestyle. It's a cult. It's a Marvel superhero, anti-hero. It's something which began as kind of Morbius is such an unusual and weird, and it's here with us though now. So I'm here with my guest, my technical operator, Ronan.
Hi.
You have to get close to the mic. People
Hi.
can't. Yes. And what we're looking at. What do you know about Morbius?
It's one of the recent movies that DC has released.
Marvel?
Marvel.
No, Sony, isn't it?
Sony.
Right, yeah, so it's in this weird proprietary space.
Sony. Okay.
With Sony have it. So it's played by Jared Leto, who has a notorious background of being a kind of divisive, polarizing figure. Maybe I'll throw everyone in the deep end as to where the Morbius space is now. So what we know is Morbius is a pop culture. It was a movie. And then it became, it was critically panned, and in terms of looking at the Rotten Tomatoes view, it's absolutely nothing in terms of critical reaction. So let's have a quick listen to where Morbius is right now. So what I'm about to play you is called the It's Morbin Time scene from Morbius. Now, for those people that have actually seen Morbius, they won't at all recall this scene because it's not actually in the movie. It's in this weird paratext space of YouTube internet where fans have fixated on the fact that this movie, yes, was a complete critical and public failure, although its sales were good enough, right? So it did have decent box office results. But nevertheless, it's considered critically, and as far as fans are concerned, quite bad. What's interesting, though, is fans have really created an ironic take on it, where they've seen it as the second coming of the best thing ever in life. And so there's all these phrases about, this film has $7 million Morb dollars worth of sales, and its Rotten Tomatoes score is
200%.
200%. And one of the phenomena are people that have overdubbed scenes and created scenes. So this scene we're about to watch has a kind of composite of other characters. Let's see what we can hear. I'll just play it.
Time to die. No, it's Morbin time.
And that's the crowd going crazy. And, of course, that was Venom there, kind of exclaiming as we're seeing this scene with Morbius and the bizarreness of a kind of fan appropriation. And, of course, what's really interesting is there's that phrase, "It's Morbin time," which is from Power Rangers. Right, weirdly, Power Rangers. So it's Morbin time. Now, what's really interesting about the Morbius thing is that so it's been taken on by fans to create memes, characterizing it as one of the most amazing films ever to be produced. And the kind of lampooning the poorness of the dialogue and character development as this amazing Morbius thing. Now, one of the things that's really confused me, as always happens in these phenomena where fans create something unusual. Right, yeah, Singing Planet, thank you for joining us on Twitch. So, of course, this show is streaming on Twitch as well. Singing Planet mentions that maybe they also took it from It's Clobbering Time, which is it Ben Grimm's phrase from Fantastic Four? It's Clobbering Time? I think that's It's Clobbering Time? Yeah, so it's Morbin time. What's interesting, what's always confusing in these kind of fan ironic moments is it quickly becomes difficult to know what's real and not real. So here's an article from Gizmondo talking about headline, You've done Morbed it. Morbius returns to theaters thanks to memes. Jared Leto's putrid Marvel vampire film is returning to theaters this weekend. You're welcome, Internet. With the idea being that these memes that have been flooding the internet and creating popularity for Morbius have triggered its rescreening in cinemas. Although then we were watching a YouTube that was saying that news is a joke news as well, that Morbius isn't out in the cinemas again. Certainly it's not out here in Australia, I think, again, but in the US it could be. Anyway, I was so confused. I was thinking, okay, the world's crazy enough that maybe these memes have triggered a return of this in the films. Because, of course, what's interesting is that Morbius, if it's rescreening, is hitting the new Top Gun Maverick film and around the corner the Jurassic World Dominion film. I don't know, Morbius. Yeah, so but it's got us interested. I've not seen Morbius, so it's certainly something which is now on our radar to watch and do a thorough review for Media Tackle in the near future. Moving on to the next story, retro gaming community is rocked by a huge counterfeit scandal. Last week we covered the NFT scandal with, was it the Bored Ape NFT by Seth Rogen? Seth. The creator of Robot Chicken, who had his NFT Bored Ape stolen and as a result kind of lost ownership of the cartoon animated series he was developing around that NFT property, which now he can't, it seems, because the NFT was actually stolen. Anyway, this story is about the retro gaming community being rocked by a counterfeit scandal. We've covered retro gaming collecting in the past on Media Tackle. This is interesting because it details how the retro gaming community had been scammed by this individual who had been selling an enormous amount over the years of retro stuff. So this all got triggered by a kind of expose, which led to people posting on Twitter their now realization that their discoveries are all fake, or their expensively purchased retro stuff is fake. Singing Planet has said, "Oh, I'm sad I missed the NFT conversation." Then again, probably a good thing I have R-rated opinions of them. Yes. Yeah, it seems like a polarizing point, but maybe a retro game is less R-rated. So certainly this guy's posted saying, "This used to be the centerpiece of my collection, rare and expensive old games. Now it turns out I've been scammed and sold forgeries by a well-known figure in the Ultima and Tetro games community, along with many others." And this is just talking about and this guy, Riccardi, had been so effective with his fake retro games that he was selling that even the it turns out there's an organization called WATA, W-A-T-A, which is responsible for evaluating old games. They even gave one of his fake games a positive grade. So yeah, even the experts were scammed and, I guess cheated by that. So yeah, the retro game space. I mean, again, it's one of those things that, The thing about NFT, which is really confusing, is that you can copy and paste NFTs, right? It's very difficult to look at the material and say that it's a fake and forgery. Here we can see that even non-digital material, so these are retro games, so this includes like the box and the cover art, can be scammed, can be forged, but then those forgeries, I guess through carbon testing, I don't know, can be shown to be forgeries. With NFTs, digital stuff, it's more difficult to prove it's a forgery because it's just a copy. It's a.
I mean, there is. You can't really forge an NFT, but I guess you can like copy the image and make a new NFT. But it's stupid thing about NFTs is that it's not really about the image. It's about the what place it's in the blockchain. It's like
right.
It's got a code and like I've got this 001 copy of a Bored Ape or something.
Yeah, look, in the amount of effort and computing processing power and energy that goes into securing, a digital authenticity, because of course that's what exists in the real world. The Mona Lisa is a verified original copy. It's not a forgery, or at least the one in the Louvre is. And that can be tested through analog means, right? Through carbon testing or whatever. But with digital stuff, because it's just zeros and ones, you have to do this really elaborate attempt to create artificial scarcity, I guess, right? Artificial scarcity. That this is not a scarcity economy in digital spaces, but it can be artificially created scarcity. So Singing Planet mentions if you're going to spend $100,000 on a retro game and most people can't tell the difference between the original and a forgery, either it's a good forgery as the original, or maybe one shouldn't be spending that sort of money on old games. Yeah, well, yeah, look, and there's always that risk of forgeries. I think there are even artworks in famous galleries that have been found to be forgeries. It's, if you've got a master forger, and up until that point, like, it's really interesting that up until the point it's a forgery, that object is super authentic, right? It has the aura of the original. But then why does that feeling go away as soon as we know it's a copy? Because it's a really good copy, though. But as soon as we know it's a copy, yeah. Let's play a short music setter for the next piece we're going to do. This is the latest trailer for... Oh, no, hold on. That was not the latest trailer. Anyway, this is the latest trailer for Stranger Things.
Don't try to be heroes. There is no shame in running.
Sick. What do you think, Mike?
It's risky as hell. Chances of success are 20 to 1.
Never tell me the odds.
Alrighty, so that's some of the great narrative that's happening in Stranger Things Season 4, for those that have been watching it. What's interesting, there's a couple of articles that I found really interesting about Stranger Things talking about, I guess, the character arcs that some of the female characters are on, and the time that those female characters are giving attention to on Stranger Things. So there's a good article in Polygon.com talking about Stranger Things finally makes room for girlhood nostalgia, kinda. What do girls like? My Little Pony, Kate Bush, and Tom Cruise, I guess. So, this is an interesting article talking about how Stranger Things has triggered a lot of nostalgia in the 80s, right? So the Duffer Brothers, who the showrunners for it, have obviously very fondly created Dungeons and Dragons, Ghostbusters references, music references, but a lot of it is really boy-centric, which, is indicative of the control that boy-centric pop culture has, I think, generally. I mean, from an industry point of view, they've devalued the female consumer base, I think, for pop culture. Singing Planet has posted a comment saying it kind of comes down to what does the item do for you? Does it make you happy? Have it, look at it, play it. It's worth what you paid for it. Everything else is Emperor's New Clothes. Yeah, well, that's right. See, even if you've bought a forgery, I think that's what's great about the Morbius example we were looking at, that it shows that even something that is devalued, right? So just like a forgery is devalued, just like those retro games that have been discovered to be fake now are devalued, Morbius was devalued, right, as a good piece of movie making. But then the fans have, well, not fans, but they're kind of trolls and internet, players have done a kind of ironic lampooning through memes of Morbius, elevating it to this inconceivable, brilliant movie. So they've taken something which is really trashy and turned this kind of Emperor's New Clothes vibe into it, right? So then people possibly will watch Morbius because they think it is good, because they've only looked at the memes, which are kind of ironically saying it's good. But if you don't know it's ironic and you watch it as
It's
good...
really good. It's a really good movie.
Now, see, are you being ironic or are you being serious? Given you haven't watched the movie.
No, I think it's a really good movie.
So thank you, Siggy Planet. So Stranger Things, yeah, for Girlhood Nostalgia, I have a PhD student that's doing their thesis on Power Rangers and Kamen Rider. And what's really interesting about Power Rangers and Kamen Rider, she was saying, is that the Western market for a lot of children's media treats the female consumption as ancillary. That is, like, you have Kamen Rider and Power Rangers, which are kind of action-based things, and they'll assume there's a male audience. They'll know there's a male audience for it. They're targeting a male audience, and they'll assume, there'll be a female young girl audience that is engaging with that, and that's great. But if you're a boy and you're watching female pop culture, that seems to carry a lot more cultural tabooness to it. Like the My Little Pony thing and the Bronies, these are male fans that love girl pop culture, My Little Pony. But there's this kind of, transgression that is defined around that move from some people, right? Saying that, boys shouldn't be watching girls' pop culture. But yet, culturally, it's fine for girls to be engaged with boys' pop culture as a default, right? Again, I'm not saying that is unproblematic. It's very problematic. Stranger Things is bringing this to light in terms of their efforts in the current season to highlight girl pop culture connected with the main female characters that are there. And the question that this Polygon article asks is it actually a positive space that we're seeing celebrated here for girl power, girl pop culture power, or is it kind of a sad reflection on industry and audience consumption? If it's My Little Pony, Kate Bush, and Tom Cruise, is that good? I mean, interestingly, so the other article about Stranger Things, which came up on AV Club, was talking about Kate Bush being back in the top ranking charts at the moment. So Stranger Things' 4th season sends Kate Bush back up to the top of the charts. This is looking at the character of Max. Max's favorite song that gets played in a number of scenes has now become everyone's favorite song after the Netflix premiere. So this is an article talking about how the incredible cultural power of Stranger Things, which triggers a renewed pop culture resurgence in another text. There's a theory on this called the long tail theory.
Oh.
Yeah, long tail theory. So the long tail theory, who is it? And someone Anderson, I think, came up with this theory, long tail theory, which basically, if you think about a Tyrannosaurus Rex or something, like it has its head, and then, of course, way down the bottom it has its tail, and the idea being that a lot of pop culture sales and success is measured only by the head of the pop culture, right? So the opening weekend, how much money did the film bring in its opening weekend? And that defines whether it was a success or not. But some texts are referred to as having a long tail, right? Which means their opening weekend might be kind of really modest or minimal, but they become what's often referred to as a cult movie or a cult text. And over time, their sales add up so that they actually, in many ways, are more popular than that thing which was a huge success, but a kind of one-hit wonder. So an example might be Mobius, right? I mean, it had a very... a realistic example would be Blade Runner, right? Its launch was a real fizzer. Blade Runner, the film by Ridley Scott, wasn't really considered a popular success when it launched. When it had its box office weekend, it was critically snubbed. Yet it's become a cult text, and if you have a look at sales over time, you'd say Blade Runner is probably one of the most successful and influential science fiction movies in the last 50 years. That would be a long tail theory, right? That to explain why, that it basically explains why the measurement of success needs to be changed. It can't just be box office opening weekend. Some texts exist in a longer sense. Singing Planet has mentioned, and Splash and Dragon has gotten to the Morbin train wagon. It's wonderful that we're participating in creating some Morb memes. Singing Planet's mentioned that I'm halfway through Stranger Things. Love it. As someone born in 1974, the nostalgia is delicious. It is good, and it is certainly pivoting towards that 70s space. There was an article I was reading about whether or not the 80s nostalgia is about to end and we're about to head into 90s nostalgia because of the number of decades that usually nostalgia periods work. Early 2000s, I think, is around the corner. Splash and Dragon mentions happened with a lot of songs in Euphoria too, yeah. So a number of, like you have the mothership media, Stranger Things, right? But then you have within that text, Stranger Things, Euphoria, songs, music, shoes, T-shirts, which are kind of referencing the era that they're set in. So if it's in the 80s, like here with season 4 of Stranger Things, Kate Bush will appear. And at the time, of course, they're not envisaging, well, what artists can we send to the top 10 again? It's like, how does, this is one of these wonderful moments of how popular culture actually works. Popular culture literally says popular, so the audience needs to find it in themselves to get something out of that culture, to say, yes, I bond with this. This speaks to me as well. I will now buy on iTunes Kate Bush's, which song is it from Kate Bush, actually? Kate Bush's Running Up the Hill, Running Up That Hill song, right? I'm going to buy that. And that triggers suddenly this song from the 80s to become in the top 10 in 2022. Mysterious. So yeah, of course, the great thing is you can't manufacture that. Pop culture, like Stranger Things, can't say, we're going to make a deal with Kate Bush or future artists to say, if you want your song to appear in our Stranger Things season 5, you need to pay us X number of dollars, and we guarantee your song will go back up to the top 10. You can't anticipate how audiences are going to react. So when it does happen, yeah, it's beautiful. Is it beautiful? Less beautiful. So that's a good story of fandom. Fandom organically, bonding to 80s music, Kate Bush, and finding something else. Singing Planet says, how often does the public agree with the critics, though? Oh, yeah. Critics look at completely different set of parameters and judge media through that. The public mostly doesn't care, and that's why Blade Runner is still a cult movie. Meanwhile, nobody remembers the names of critics who didn't like it. Yeah, look, Singing Planet, that is a great point. And in fact, I think, I'd go even further and say Pirates of the Caribbean, all those Transformers movies, critically panned as being just dross and unintelligible. And many critics saying they don't understand how these are popular. Right, and in fact, Transformers, while many people dislike it, huge sales, enormously successful financial franchises, right? So that says something about audience engagement and audience meaning making, right? And so this theory from Henry Jenkins, called linked to transmedia theory, was saying that these films like Pirates of the Caribbean and the Transformers films shows that critics are out of touch with what storytelling is today, right, in terms of what's successful mainstream Hollywood storytelling. Because if you look at what is central in Pirates of the Caribbean and Transformers, it's world building, right? It's not character arc. It's not plot. It's really effective world building. And that was his argument, when Pirates of the Caribbean and Transformers were peaking in the cinema. So it might be a little bit dated. But nevertheless, this was this early days of saying world building is what people need to get done well, that fans are engaging with big worlds and wanting to see complex worlds on screen, where they can do a bit of forensic fandom and figure out what's happening within it, to explain why these films like Pirates of the Caribbean and Transformers are popular yet critically disparaged. That there's still some redemptive interest there because it's world building based. I don't know. Splash and Dragon says the first Transformers is enjoyable, but they get increasingly ridiculous. Sometimes it's funny to go watch a film where you don't have to think though. Yeah, look, and I think that's what I'm looking forward to with Morbius. I think the meme reaction to it has finally been able to put that film in a category of engagement. The so bad it's good. It's a kind of switch off your brain meme thing maybe. Singing Planet mentions, I feel like critic has become synonymous with gatekeeper. Yeah, that's very true. But people just want to have some fun. Self-proclaimed arbiter egalitarianism can pat themselves on the back as much as they like. The rest of us have a good time. Yeah, no, look, some really good points there on the chat. Thank you for making those. So some good stuff there, praising fans as being powerful and not sheep and being able to decide themselves what interests them and not be about gatekeeping critic culture. Less good is this story coming out of AV Club talking about Star Wars and the Obi-Wan Kenobi thing. So let's we'll set the scene. We'll have a quick, I always like doing this when I can. We will now play this music.
They're coming.
Stay hidden, or we will not survive.
Leave us alone.
When the time comes, he must be trained.
Like you trained his father?
All right, so that, of course, is the sultry tones of Ewan McGregor coming back as Obi-Wan Kenobi. There was some snippets from the trailer. And Splash and Dragon got it, Ewan McGregor, yeah. So Obi-Wan Kenobi, the new series, is out now on Disney+. I want to touch base with this interesting story on AV Club talking about how Star Wars has defended the actor Moses Ingram against the racist Obi-Wan Kenobi viewers. And I find this story really fascinating, of course, because a few weeks ago we covered the John Boyega kind of friction that he had with Disney and the Star Wars trilogy he was part of, feeling really unsatisfied with how his character arc progressed and accusing Disney of not being able to write for a black lead, right? That they were just unable to write effectively for, non-white characters. So he had some very harsh words to say about Star Wars and the Disney creative team in those films as being progressive and engaging with, non-white identities. So it is encouraging to hear in this story that the Star Wars higher up have put their foot down, defending the actor Moses Ingram, who plays one of the bad guys in the Kenobi film, one of the, the Inquisitors, the people tracking down the Last Jedis and killing them. Anyway, defending her against the racist attacks against her casting, right, as one of these Inquisitors. So in the follow-up tweet, the official count from Disney Star Wars added, there are more than 20 million sentient species in the Star Wars galaxy. Don't choose to be racist. And the first tweet they posted was, we are proud to welcome Moses Ingram to the Star Wars family and excited for Reva's story to unfold. If anyone intends to make her feel in any way unwelcome, we have only one thing to say, we resist. Right, so that's really progressive, right? Considering, I think Star Wars and Disney have received quite a bit of flack in terms of less progressive stance on issues of race and diversity in their media creation. What do we got in the comments? So we've got some really interesting comments coming in. around. So Singing Planets mentioned that the best movie I've seen in years. Emotionally recover before I watch it again. And Singing Planet says, I've unpacked a few layers of old family trauma. Wow. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot within cinema, movies, filmmaking that can trigger some engagement. The last story is just a weird one. I always like anything on virtual reality. This one, so the image up on the Twitch stream or YouTube, if anyone's watching it, is, it's like a kind of, talking of Stranger Things, devices and science. It's one of these wonderful devices. So the guy's wearing an Oculus VR headset, and then he's got a kind of gas mask, one of your kind of home renovation kind of, or spray, like a spray gun. But it's got these kind of digital devices on the inlet and outlet for the air to come in and out. So what it is, researchers have turned up the horror with a mask that simulates suffocation in virtual reality. We seem determined to make virtual reality a terrifying experience. So this is an article talking about how a research team at the Salzburg University of Applied Sciences in Austria have a new research publication talking about how they have a device called the AirRes mask that's designed to be worn alongside a consumer-friendly VR, so you can just buy it on the internet, like the Meta Quest 2, and serve as an additional way to interact with virtual experiences through the user's breathing, right? So even though this is a research team, it looks like they're setting it up as a way that, just your average person can then play a game and suffocate, it seems. So the article goes on to say the AirRes mask works in two ways. The first approach, and the one less likely to traumatize users, leverages the mask as a way to monitor their breathing and incorporate it into the VR experience to enhance the feeling of immersion. Applications include simple everyday acts like blowing out the virtual candle, right? So if you're doing a virtual birthday with your grandparents and friends, you can put this device on your mouth and your VR headset, and it will replicate the act of blowing out that candle on your birthday cake.
What about like in games that are more like fighting games, if you get like strangled or something?
I think that is a more traumatic use of it, possibly. Yeah. So they say inflating a balloon or even playing an instrument such as a harmonica using their own breath. So basically, yeah, it's that kind of full immersion. Your body is feeling it. Hitting the target when firing a virtual arrow from a bow, for example, is made a lot easier when the user holds their breath and steadies themselves, right? So that's another example. So the second approach leverages the mask's ability to add resistance to the wearer's ability to breathe. Suffocation doesn't seem like a particularly fun way to escape one's own reality, but the researchers believe the AirRes mask could also be used as a more realistic training tool. Right, so this is interesting. So here they're talking about training tool for firefighters who could physically experience the lack of oxygen in a room as a raging fire consumes it, including the simulated side effects of the human body of not getting enough oxygen, like the onset of tunnel vision, but without the added risks of a real fire. The mask could make flight simulators feel more realistic too, as the added G-forces of high-speed maneuvers make it harder for a pilot to breathe. The article ends by saying it certainly doesn't sound like a fun VR experience, as swinging a virtual lightsaber to the beat of your favorite song, but as horrifying as it seems, it does help further demonstrate the unique potential of VR and its ability to sometimes make us feel genuinely uncomfortable without putting us in danger. Ooh, what have the comments said? So, Singing Planets mentioned that for some reason I feel that horror movie watchers are going to be the main target audience for their item. And Splash and Dragon says, I'd love an episode on the world building by world building by Riot Games. Yeah, lots of interesting stuff. Yeah, entirely. Look, world building is such a fascinating area. I did a research paper on tourism as world building, looking specifically at the Ross Bakery and Kiki's delivery service, as well as Ghibli trips to Japan, and how animated films that have done world building can then spill out into people's actual lived tourist experience in locations that are the basis for those films as a world building expansion. Interesting. But yeah, no, video games, a whole brave new world, Riot Games in particular, would be a great case study. Thank you, Splash Dragon. We'll add that to the list of research grants that we're putting together to incorporate theories. In fact, this ties in with a previous episode where we were talking about doing a GTA-based research project in Burnie, right? Does playing GTA in Burnie make Burnie more interesting? Yeah. So there was a research project done in Hobart of how people playing GTA in Hobart find that Hobart then becomes a more interesting place because they see Hobart as having elements of a global city, like gangs. So, yeah. If we find one of the more interesting locations like Burnie. So Splash and Dragons mentioned I was very influenced by your stuff. Thank you. Great, Jess Mute, it's wonderful to have you on. Yes, of course I remember. Splash and Dragon, we'll have to have you on the show to interview you about ideas and theories. We'll pick up on the honors in Japanese fashion. I fondly remember that. In fact, maybe we'll do a live reading of Chapter 3, which was my favorite of all the chapters of the thesis. Usually Chapter 3, much like any TV show season, is when it really gets serious. I think SpongeBob, the best season 3.
Yeah.
Well, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks very much, everyone, for listening. This has been Media Tackle with Craig Norris, joined by Ronan for another week. Think about whether or not a suffocation device on virtual reality would take your gaming to the next level. But if you haven't seen Obi-Wan Kenobi, maybe give it a view. And Stranger Things, of course, is on at the moment. Have a look at how they're articulating girl pop culture nostalgia. Does it work for you? Is it honest? Is it as interesting as boys pop culture? Or does it reflect, again, the patriarchal struggle that continues in culture today? Retro gaming, should you go over your retro gaming collection to see what has been forgery now? And finally, Mobius. Yeah. Let's get Morbin.
Yeah, let's get Morbin.
It's Morbin time. Great. So keep listening to Edge Radio. More exciting news around the corner.
Have a great weekend.
Yeah.